everyone, and welcome back to the Homebrew Workshop. In this video, we're going to take a look at Tinker's Tools and see about what we know about them, how we can improve them and make them more interesting for use for D&D 5th edition. So, without any further ado, let's take a look at Tinker's Tools. So what exactly do we know about Tinker's Tools? We know that it's a type of tool. We know that it costs 50 gold pieces to procure, and it weighs 10 pounds. Otherwise, it allows you to add your proficiency bonus to any checks that would be applicable for a set of Tinker's Tools. But they don't really have too much guidance in what that might end up meaning. It's up for DM interpretation, which, while wonderful, maybe we could use a prompter. Maybe we could use a little bit of an idea of what might be a valuable tinkering tool activity. I propose that we look at Tinker's Tools with a little bit more of a different light. Tinker's Tools within the world are something that someone can use to pursue a trade. As such, I would say that we have probably two rough goal areas. Goal area 1 is to make it something that the player can take advantage of to pursue a trade, to give some sort of way to earn money during downtime, but to procure it as like an actual trade within the world. Other than that, for objective 2, what I say is that we find a way to make them interesting. We find a way to make them a little bit more invested as players when they have Tinker's Tools, and use them more often than just, I guess I have proficiency with this. Now, there are plenty of different suggestions and ideas that you can think of, especially given the Critical Role character Percival and his gunslinger subclass and his ability to be a tinkerer who created his own guns and ammunition and everything that way, and is always leaning into that different kind of mindset. But how do we expand on that and make tinkering something that anybody could potentially be doing? Well, to fulfill both goal areas at the same time, what I suggest is that for an active tinkering production, we lean into the fact that a tinkering project in and of itself is probably going to take quite a bit of time. It's going to take downtime and availability and can be picked up and potentially set down over the course of however long the person needs. And so they can literally always choose to be working on one project or another or multiple at the same time. And when they're completed, sell the items they've created. Picture a gnome that they are famously the people that ended up developing clockwork and other things within D&D 5th edition. There's just kind of a thing where you're like, yep, the gnomes made that. They're clever, they're long-lived, they figured that out. That's kind of what tinkering is, to some extent, is not necessarily the heavy metal of blacksmithing or anything else kind of along those lines, but the very fine-tuned, delicate work that allows something as intricate as a clock to work. And those kinds of things are very valuable, and they take time to build. But ultimately, if you have a tinkering shop and you are there as a clockmaker or a watchmaker or anything else kind of like that, then you're able to develop those types of constructions, and whenever you develop one, you're able to sell it. And that's how you make your money. So to fulfill objective 1, basically, whenever you finish a project and you have it on hand, we will make a system here that has how long it takes as well as how much it's worth. And then you can go and attempt to sell it whenever you do have the time to do so. For goal area 2, you can also use the same system to be able to make pretty much anything. Now, Tinker's Tools can be used to perform this downtime work, but downtime work is still relatively limited. Sometimes you will need a clean environment with tools being readily available, but this isn't necessarily something that you can't do on the road. Like, if you are a blacksmith, you're going to need the forge, an anvil, all of these other things as a static location that keeps you fairly locked to that one place. But Tinker's Tools has the potential for you to set up a desk or a table or something and carry those very specific tools and materials with you to continue to work on a project. It's the equivalent of continuously working on a puzzle ball. and continuously fiddling with it over the course of many, many days as you journey, ultimately completing it and then selling it in the next town. That's how this system is designed to work. That allows you to create a number of different things. But how exactly do you do that? Ultimately, what you end up doing is you pick a kind of target intent. You choose, hey, I'm going to try to make a grandfather clock. I'm going to try to make a crossbow. I'm going to try to make whatever. And then from there, you can work with your DM to determine the actual size class on the table here. And we will use the size table and the complexity/quality table to determine everything we need to know about this tinkering production. What you're looking at in terms of a size class, if you're looking to make a pocket watch, that would be a size class of tiny. You have the size multiplier, the time in hours that it will take to create it, and the size DC modifier. The important thing, at least for this step, is to determine the time that it will take in hours. And so once you've declared your project, you can roll a 1d4 plus 1 to determine exactly how long it will take you to make this. This, in kind of conjunction with the complexity, on the complexity table, simple, low, average, moderate, high, and extreme, allows you to determine, well, exactly how much money can I make off of it. So you can choose at the very beginning, I'm going to make a pocket watch because it's small and it shouldn't take me that long, but I'm going to make it very highly detailed with very high quality. So I'm going to use the best materials and I'm going to make it look pretty and make it something that's appealing for somebody to purchase. That makes it so that if you were to choose a extreme gold piece modifier, it's 6d12 times the size modifier, which is the size multiplier. So the size multiplier for a tiny class is a 1. Now, an extreme is 6d12 times that 1 gold pieces that one pocket watch would be worth. Here's the challenge. You can choose those things, and that would be well and good if you could just choose that and be done. But that's not exactly how it works. As a tinkerer, there are things that can go wrong. There are things that can go very right, and there are things that can be kind of a challenge as you travel kind of through the journey of making this thing. So what you'll end up doing is taking all of your declared pieces and taking into account the size DC modifier and the complexity DC modifier. You have what is called a tinkering challenge at this point. It's a skill challenge that totals 3 different skill checks as they are called by your DM. These checks can utilize really any skill that your DM chooses or thinks would be applicable, but they'll probably be something intelligence, wisdom, or dexterity based. So if you're looking to make a build that leans into this, it's probably going to be one of those kinds of things. But your success is determined by meeting the calculated project DC from earlier. The project DC is the 10 as a base, plus your size DC modifier and your complexity DC modifier. So if you have a gargantuan structure of tinkering that you are looking to do, like a massive, basically a building, and it's a size DC modifier of plus 10, that immediately jumps the DC that you have to beat up to a flat 20. Not taking into account the quality, and if you were to go for the extremely high quality, like extreme, then now you have to beat a total of a 25 because the extreme complexity DC modifier is a plus 5. So that means that this, as a massive project, is also very difficult for you to handle alone. And so with help and with other workers, it's much easier to be able to handle this kind of a project. And what you can do is work with your DM to figure out how that affects the DC and everything kind of along those lines. But ultimately, for the tinkering challenge, all you have to do is succeed on 2 of those 3 skill challenge rolls against that project DC. So as long as you're making a tiny and simple object, you can make quite a bit of money with very little difficulty. But if you fail, you waste the time and materials, or you end up creating something that is of a lower quality and therefore worth less with the same materials. The idea here is that your DM will work with you specifically on the materials that you'll need based on the size multiplier and the complexity that you're looking to undertake. They'll say, okay, that'll probably cost you about this much in materials. So that money gets spent at the very beginning. Bam, it is in there and invested. The minute that you start, you cannot get that back. And if you succeed, you have the chance at earning much more money out of it. But if you fail, you may end up losing money on it based on either losing all of the project and materials and time, or say if you're looking for a high quality item and it's a tiny item but it's a high quality item and it's worth 12 gold pieces at the end, but then you fail on this check, you don't succeed on 2. Your DM may rule that you are able to create the item, but not at a high quality, but at a moderate quality, which is less, or an average quality, which is, once again, less. And so you may be at a kind of loss in terms of your monetary gain for this particular project, but at the very least, you still have something to show for it. Ultimately, the Tinker's Tools process does allow for repair and augmentation. Basically, you use roughly the same process, but it is a little bit easier to repair an existing item. Picture somebody coming by looking for the clock repairman, right? They come by the store to have these things tuned and taken care of, to have their watch dealt with and cleaned properly without throwing any of the sensitive pieces out of whack. Or someone's clockwork crossbow that is, well, very powerful, also kind of finicky, they need it a little bit more tuned up. That's something that you can undertake using the same challenge. Your DM will tell you what the size class of the item is, as well as the complexity. And what you can end up doing for the repair is repeat it as though it was going to be a new creation. However, you A, do not have to pay for any materials going in, and B, only get the half of the total complexity value for the gold pieces out of it. Because you are not creating a brand new item, you are ultimately just tuning up an existing one. So if you would be earning 4d12 times the size modifier for a high complexity item, and it's not necessarily a high complexity item value that you get in return, you didn't have to spend anything, so that is all profit. You only get half of whatever that 4d12 actually rolls out to be. The other thing for Tinkerer's Tools, just to make them interesting, is augmentations. There are things within the world that you will be willing and interested in potentially adding into a tinkered device. Some sort of magitech aspect of it. Say that you find a magical crystal that allows you to augment that same crossbow with a little bit more of an elemental energy to it. Now, instead of it just firing a simple mundane bolt, it shoots off an ice bolt or a radiant bolt or something else like that. If you want to augment something into an existing item, first of all, you're going to need an existing item. This augmentation can take place really at any time during the process of creation, as long as the creation is successful. But otherwise, integrations are a separate skill challenge. This production can really be its own thing, and you can choose to do it all at once just for sake of time saving within your game, but if the production fails, then you can't augment something into it, not effectively anyway. And so you need to have an item that either already exists or that is finalized, and then once you undertake this challenge, it's basically just another integration skill challenge where all you really need to do is roll to see if you can beat the integration DC 3 times, and that's here on this table here. Integrations can really only happen to an average or higher quality tinkered item. So if you were to make your own, you're going to want something that is of a higher quality, because those kinds of things will actually stand up to this level of augmentation. The gold paste volume modifier is how much gets actually added into the piece itself if you were going to be adding it in. Then the time in hours is how long it will actually take to make this integration happen. The integration DC is set, so there's nothing else that you really need to calculate for this. If you were going to attempt to make an average DC, average quality integration, which will depend on the item that you're looking to integrate and the piece that you have, that will be an integration DC of 12. And as long as you can beat that 2 out of those 3 times, the integration is successful. Otherwise, you may lose the item that you're looking to integrate if you were to fail, or you may break the item that you have created up until this point, being that both of these things are relatively fragile to some extent, and your DM will rule on what ends up happening. There's also a potential for a partial success, where you do succeed, but at what cost? Now your weapon or your thing has errors. How many things can you imagine that end up being like a crossbow bolt that will accidentally backfire, or a magical light that someone has tinkered into place that is able to turn itself off and on at regular intervals whenever the sun goes down or whenever it doesn't, that ends up just exploding at random points. These kinds of things are a partial success, and you may or may not know exactly if it was a good success or not. Your DM may just say, mark that one down as special, and then they know, and the next time you use it, something interesting might happen. In the spirit of things, tinkering is ultimately something that you can do as an interest. And so this allows you to lean into the interest of tinkering and be creative and come up with your own creations in the game. You can say, we need to cross a bridge, therefore I'm going to work ahead of time to make an extending or extendable bridge that we can end up crossing this chasm with, as opposed to chopping down a tree or finding some other way to cross. I'm going to make something that folds down, telescopes into a more portable version, and make it that way. And so your DM's like, ooh, okay, we'll make that tinkering roll. And that is something completely out of your own brain that may or may not be successful, but at the very least, you got to flex your creative juices to lean into this aspect of how tinkering is meant to work. Tinkering within the world even is meant to be kind of pushing the boundaries of what individual people can create. And so this system is designed to augment that and highlight that fact, to be able to allow you to unleash your full creativity on your Dungeons & Dragons campaign and allow you to shape the world in terms of what is possible. That's it for the Tinker's Tools. Thank you all for watching. Next time we'll look into one of these other tool systems, but I appreciate you all sticking tuned throughout the tinkering checks here. It does get to be a lot, I know, and it's a lot of numbers, but trust me, hopefully if this works well and you enjoy it in your campaign, let me know. Leave a comment, tell me what you think. Hopefully it actually works well enough. I've done some testing for it and it should be okay, but it's one person testing. So if you want to do anything more, I would definitely love feedback. But I digress here. Thank you all for watching. Be good to one another, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.